I cry easily, as some of you know and have seen. And I get verklempt easily. So this was a week, though, that I realized that I cried 4 times, which felt like maybe a lot. So the first one was watching a clip of the news about the tornado in Mississippi and Alabama, and tornadoes, plural. And it was did anyone else watch the clip of the newscaster announcing, the weather reporter? So the weather reporter, it's the live broadcast of the weather report, and he's telling everybody there are tornadoes coming. And, he's pointing to the screen, and it's like a swath of red, and he's saying, it's coming this way, it's coming to this town, it's coming through this town, it's coming. And then he turns to the camera and he says, but you guys all put too much trust in me. You all think that I'm telling you exactly where it's going to go, and I'm telling you I don't really know where it's going to go. Just get safe. Everybody, find shelter. If you're outside, go inside. Don't be unprotected. Everybody take cover. There are tornadoes coming. I can't tell you exactly where. And then he looks and he says, and he kind of catches his breath and he says, and it's coming to, and I'm forgetting the name of the town, Amory maybe? Whatever he says, it's coming directly to the name of the town. And then he looks down and he bows his head in prayers and he said, oh dear God, please help them. That was the first one. The second one was the school shooting. Just reading the headline was enough that these poor children and their parents are going through what they're going through just by sending their children to school, that such a tragedy would happen is heartbreaking. So that was the second one. The third one, thank you, Sue, for forwarding me, was watching the unfolding protests in Israel, which themselves weren't bringing me to tears, though they were filling me with lots of emotion. And then Sue sent me, you were the first one to send me a clip. Who else saw the clip of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra protesting? So they're gathered in their jeans and their T-shirts and their secular Israeli garb. It's no concert. They're just showing up as Israelis protesting, and they start playing the Hatikva. And it was so powerful to see the patriotism, the love of country, the devotion, and here we are, and we are going to play this song that we, even in this country, Jews everywhere should still believe and hope and stay connected. And we in this country, we in the country of Israel, are here as Israelis with hope. Come on, we're protesting. So moving. And then the fourth time, with the deeply personal, right? The 8th grade tekes at the Heschel School, and watching Eloise up there with her classmates getting ready to go their 8th grade Israel trip, which the school does after Passover. The kids leave for their Israel trip. And I got so verklempt, as one does, watching your child up there, and they've gotten so grown up, and it's their turn, and I can't believe, and she was just in 1st grade, and right, so I had that moment of like parenthood and time passing and love. And so then I turned to Parshat Tzav, and I really want something that's going to speak to the emotional depth, right? These 4 very different, like deeply emotional feelings, right? And I'm getting these sacrifices, right? And I'm getting but I'm realizing that I think this was what our ancient ancestors were going for, right? Like what was animal sacrifice all about? Last time we talked about the move from korbanot to tefillot, right? From sacrifice to prayer. That was last Shabbos. This Shabbos, I feel like maybe we're being invited to ask the question, what did it do for our ancestors? And how might we make sense of that now as 2023 American Jews on our way into Pesach? So I looked up my trusty scholarship by Everett Fox, whom I know some of us like to play with, right? Joel looks up, Everett Fox. Everett Fox has a wonderful piece on animal sacrifice. And he posits a few ideas of what this must be all about. First of all, the Israelites were not the only ones offering up animals as a way to connect to the divine, right? That was kind of a universal way in the ancient world. Almost every culture has that as a feature of the way one interacted with the gods, the god, right, was to offer up some kind of animal sacrifice, or sometimes human, right? So clearly it must have done something. So the first idea that he suggests is that what it did was it helped with the anxiety of the killing, right? The killing that ancient people needed to kill, hunt, raise domesticated animals. And there's some sense that that's not right to kill for food. And so on like the most visceral level, it's a controlling of that sense of this isn't right and I need to do it. And so I'm going to do it in a controlled manner in a way that can mean something else. So it's not just out of disregard for the God who we know has told us not to kill, right? We've gotten that from the beginning. Do not kill. We know we're not supposed to kill one another. And we even have pretty early on in Genesis that the blood of an animal is, right, the blood is life. So we know we're not supposed to be killing. And so there's something very visceral. I'm going to kill these animals, but I'm going to do it in a way that's prescribed and holy and sanctified. And that's going to somehow relieve the anxiety of the other killing that's going on in my life. So that's like one possible answer. Another possible answer is that it was a feeding of the gods of sorts, right? Not just in our culture, we don't believe in a God that needed food, right? But that there's something about the exchange of an offering up of something that's going to smoke on an altar, and it's literally going to go up and feed a god. So in Jewish life, what that might mean is that we're offering up some of our meal to you, right? Like we are offering up some of what we have, what you have given us, and we're giving it to you in the only way we know how, which is to burn it and have the smoke rise up to the heavens. And in that sense, it's actually like a sharing of the meal, which might be the idea or might be another idea, which is communion, a word that the Catholics take up and Christians take up. But what does that mean? It's the sharing of food. It's the holy sharing of food between people and God, right? And communion actually is what we do, thank you, rabbis, every meal after the temple is destroyed becomes a communion. All of our meals become holy as we say blessings over our food. And then we make sure the food is kosher and has certain rules about it so that we're not just eating wantonly, right? It becomes a place where we can invite God in. And we'll come back to that as we think about Seder and Pesach and what's that all about. Maybe actually the Seder table is just that. It's bringing God in to our homes and saying, we're going to share this meal that we have with you, right? The final two ideas really is guilt and expiation, gratitude and expiation for guilt, right? So there's different kinds of offerings that we have just read some of them, right? That one kind of offering is the gratitude offering, and one kind of offering is the guilt offering when I've done something wrong. And each of those are listed out in what we just read. So to come back to my moments of emotion this week, it occurs to me that actually the fact that there are different kinds of offerings maybe map on to our own emotional states, right? So I might feel the lack in Tzav because it doesn't say, when you are moved to tears by some violence in your land, right, this is what you shall say. Instead, it says, when you want to offer a shlamim offering, this is what you're going to do. So it's like our ancient system mapping onto, well, what did I feel? First, I felt fear. We're out of control. Tornadoes, nature, we're not in control. There's a God who's in control. And dear God, I need to do something. What do I need to do, right? The weather reporter bowed his head in prayer. We might pray. What are the things we can do, right? We can go to an activism route. We can go to an environmentalism route. We can go to a how we build nurturing societies route, right? We can go to a prayer route. The second one, where we have violence, that feels like an activism moment, both around gun violence and also mental health, that we need to foster a culture in which all of us in all of our states of varying mental health are taken care of. So we're not brought to the brink of doing something horrible and violent, and then the guns need to be less accessible too. So we have what to do as activists, but also as prayers, Because, dear God, please help us through this, right? And that's what's going on with the offerings. My offering up and offering down. Dear God, help us through this. And so, too, with moments of prayer or being moved to Israel, as I was watching that protests, right? I was moved by what? I was overcome by my place in the Jewish people. I was overcome by peaceful protests. I was overcome by a different sense of both pride and gratitude and sense of miracleness and the human power and agency of change. And then finally, gratitude, right? That was the final one, standing there watching my child taking part in her educational progression. So for each of these, I feel like Leviticus is giving us a map of what our ancients did. And for each of us, we need to find our way. So how might we bring those 4 into our Seder? Because there's 4 in the Seder. There's a lot of 4s, right? So not only do we have a table where we've gathered around and we're in communion with God, right? And we're in communion with our family, our friends, whoever we're blessed to partake of that meal, but we have these 4. And it strikes me that we've just read a number of, at least 4 of the kinds of offerings that are made. And so in order to tie this back to our Pesach Seder, I want to invite us each to think about the emotions that you want to tie to your 4 cups, to your 4 questions, that our Seder should be multivalenced emotionally, right? There is a progression from slavery to freedom, right? And we begin Avadim Hayinu, and we go through the story until we are Ata Ben Chorin, B'nei Chorin, right? Free people in the land. We end with Eliyahu and hopes for L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, right? It's a hopeful message for peace and for freedom and for Mashiach to come. But there's so much more in the valence that maps onto the emotional states of our lives. So as we lift up our 4 cups, let's think about attaching some piece of our emotional reality to each cup. As we ask our 4 questions, let's make sure that the 4 questions we're asking might be real, like, dear God, why tornadoes? What can I do to help the world be more peaceful? How do I want to relate to Israel? Whatever it is that's going on in your life, find the 4 things that can help ground you and make your Seder not one that's only rote or handed down, but something that really is meaningful and makes us all feel God's presence, the way the sacrifices enabled our ancient ancestors to feel God's presence in their lives as well. I wish everybody a Chag Kasher v'Sameach. We will be gathering back here in just a few days to celebrate together, but since we will be celebrating at home for your Sidarim, I hope it is meaningful and joyful to everyone.